Hey everyone, in this tutorial we're going to look at how to take this piece of ribbing, fold it over, and make a double folded collar for a raglan. Just a note on the yarn, I'm using fingering weight yarn and a 3.5mm hook, and this beautiful yarn is from Dying Wishes Yarn Co. This was gifted to me, and I'm using a combination of wool and cotton, and this is their creepy cotton sock, and it's seriously so lovely. Dying Wishes Yarn Co. I mean, this is not sponsored. I just want to talk about how I love them. They also have like an anti-fat tax. So if you are a plus size maker, you can order this beautiful yarn and you get like a huge discount. So you should definitely go check them out. I love their yarn, and yeah. One more note before we start. So this is ribbing using the slip stitch, double slip stitch, back loop only alternating, or double slip stitch, back loop only is also known as yarn over slip stitch. So people ask me, how can you tell the rows? So these, you can see these V's here, right? These are the double slip stitch or yarn over slip stitch rows. So these V's count as their own row, and that is the even row. And then there's a divot in between the V's. This little divot here are rows as well, and those are your slip stitch rows. So you can see, like, we have, this is my first row, so this is the first slip stitch in the foundation chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like that. So that's how you can count your rows. But I've already done my rows. I have 96 rows. Okay, so now I ended on an even row, because that's how we're going to do that for my patterns. Okay, so I ended on an even row, so I'm on the wrong side. I'm going to chain 1, and then we're going to take the wrong sides together and put them together. So our right side needs to be facing out and the wrong sides need to be facing together. And we're just going to kind of do a slip stitch together, basically. Okay, so I'm going to work into the back bump of the double slip stitch row from the row that's closest to me. And then on the opposite row, over here, this is the slip stitch row. I'm going to work into the front loop of the slip stitch. Then I'm just going to slip that right through. So again, row closest to me, my double slip stitch row, I'm going to work into the back loop. And then the one farthest away from me, I'm going to go into the front loop of the slip stitch. And this is how we're going to do our little slip stitch seam all the way up. And you should make sure that you have the same amount of slip stitch seams as your stitches. Okay, so I'm going to finish this up. I'm going to pause the video. So you go ahead, pause the video and finish up, and I'll meet you at the end here. I'm ready to start seaming it all together. So I'm actually going to change my hook size to a slightly larger one. So I'm using a 3.5. I'm going to go 0.5mm up from my original hook size to a 4. Okay, so I'm going to find my my stitch, and then I'm going to chain 1. Now, we are not going to work into where we seamed the 2 rows together. So remember, we ended on a double slip stitch and I started on a slip stitch. So I'm actually going to go, like, not into this double slip stitch row. We're going to go right here into this slip stitch only row. So we're going to single crochet the rows together. So let's insert our hook into that row, then find it on the opposite side. So here's where I seamed it together. Here's my double slip stitch row because we can see the V's. So insert your hook right there. And then we're going to yarn over, pull up a loop. We have 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through. That is a single crochet stitch, and that is our first stitch. So now we're just going to make single crochets all the way around. So into our next stitch, I'm going to insert my hook into the 2 V's in that double slip stitch, turn it over, find it on the opposite side, and make a single crochet. Good. And then the next slip stitch row is like, it's a little tricky, so you could just put it wherever. You can put it up here, you could put it there. It really depends on whatever you like. Okay, so now let's do the next one. Here's our double slip stitch, go into those V's there, and then turn that over and go right in. So the most important thing here is to make sure you have the same exact amount of single crochet stitches as your row. So my advice to you is to every 20 rows, because you're definitely going to have more than like 20 rows for your collar, every 20 stitches, not rows, you should place a new stitch marker to help keep track so you can like count easier later. Okay, so I'm going to keep placing my single crochets, set up rows all the way around, and every 20 single crochet set up row stitches, I'm going to place a stitch marker so I know how many stitches I've been doing, and so it'll be easy for me to count when I'm all finished. Okay, so I have 96 collar rows, so I'm going to have 96 single crochet stitches. So go ahead, pause the video, get in there. Go ahead and pause the video and work your single crochet setup row all the way around, making sure to place your slip stitch every 20 stitches or so. You can do every 10 stitches, but I like to do 20 because then the counting just isn't as much for me later. Okay, and see, look at that. I need to make sure I'm going into the correct stitches. All right, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so on the 20th stitch, I'll place a stitch marker. And yeah, so if you want to, actually, you should place a stitch marker in your first stitch. That's actually a really good idea. I will place my special ghost one, and I will pause the video and meet you when we have the last few rows left. Everyone, I've basically finished. I just have the last 6 rows left because I have 96. So I can see I have them here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to finish those rows off. And it's really convenient because we know our slip stitch rows are odd rows and double slip stitch rows are even rows. So I think that makes doing this double folded collar extremely convenient. Okay, and now I just did my slip stitch. I should be counting. And based on the pattern, and you can do this differently if you're not following my pattern, but we ended on an even row, which is the double slip stitch row. So I know that this is my last row. This here was just created when we seamed the 2 sides together, so truly no worries there. Okay, let me find that. So here's my one on this side. Let me find my last row here. Okay, great. Now, if you made it all the way around and you're like, oh my god, I just need like a few more stitches, or you need to like squeeze in a few more, hopefully you don't have to, because I don't know if that will like totally throw off the raglan. I've done it before and it doesn't throw off your raglan. So if you only need a few more stitches, you can like squeak in a few here, or you can like decrease 2 together. But if you follow the pattern of the slip stitch, double slip stitch, double slip stitch rows, then you'll be good. Okay, and now we're going to, so I'm on my last row, we're going to slip stitch into the top of our first single crochet stitch. And then we're going to slip stitch that in here, pull that tight. Great.